All right, welcome. I'm Keith Reynolds. This is the Publio podcast. Really glad to have you join us again. This show is for CEOs, entrepreneurs, business owners, and managers that want to use media to grow their business and surround it with inbound marketing and get the customer pipeline built. So we're a consulting and training and development and media company. My company is Publio. And we love to help our clients geek out on all this and get their show up and running. I'm here with Jesse Glassberg. Welcome, Jesse.
Hey, Keith. How are you today, bud?
Good. I hear you went hiking this weekend.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Anthony's Nose by the Bear Mountain Bridge. Absolutely beautiful. Great view of the Hudson. Great view of Bear Mountain. A couple bridges right on the side there. Excellent hike if no one's ever gone before.
Beautiful country, beautiful view. Yeah. So welcome. We got a great show going on again this week. Yes, Russell Jones, the CEO of the Stamford Symphony. And imagine being in the business of putting people in a theater when the pandemic hit.
Oh my God.
And so he tells an amazing story of putting the symphony online. And what it took to get a large group of unionized professionals who had all just had their world come crashing down, and they built the Stamford Symphony and put up music right away to soothe people and give comfort. And they had an amazing recorded. There was one of those recorded everywhere tiled views of them playing Amazing Grace. It was quite a story.
Yeah, he's a very impressive guy. I've never known a CEO of a symphony, but having heard him talk, it makes me want to be one for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's get started. Let's roll right into it. Enjoy the conversation, and we'll see you on the other side. Welcome, Russell.
Hi, Keith. Hi, Jesse. Very good to be with you.
It's great to have you. We've started having some really awesome conversations with CEOs and executives that really are getting their arms around media and social media and making it a strategic part of their business. We're so glad to have you on board today.
Good to be here.
So tell us a little bit about yourself, your role at the Symphony, and what's up with you?
Well, this week I'm notching up 4 years at the Stamford Symphony, which is incredibly hard to imagine. And as we look to begin the 5th season, I still haven't had a normal season. The first 2 seasons we were looking for a music director. The 3rd season we had a music director designate, but obviously not somebody that was involved in all the programs. Then we were about to have Michael Stern's first full season as music director, and a little thing called the pandemic hit us. So that blew us out of the water. And the season we're coming back with, starting with our online gala on October the 23rd, is not a normal season either. It will get there, but we're growing back to being a full season. So it'll be 22-23, my 6th season, before I hope we do a proper normal set of concerts, whatever they will be by then, with a music director in place. So you have to like change in this job. And there's been a lot of it, but it's an enormous privilege to do this job because I think there's a huge hunger for quality music and arts in general in this part of the world. We live in the shadow of perhaps one of the most artistic cities in the world, in New York, and yet we have enormously strong and vibrant arts scene here in Fairfield County, and it's great that the symphony can play its part in being part of that.
Well, you have a long and rich history, and one of the professional organizations. I don't know if people really understand this, often understand the scope and the scale of the Stamford Symphony. Give us a little sense of the dimension, and then also tell us about why the symphony or why classical music is important in a community.
Well, there was a Stamford Symphony way back in 1919, and we don't know too much about it way back then. It really became established in the 60s as a bit of a pro-am organization. And then in the 80s, it really became the full professional orchestra. That's when we came out of the high school and into the Palace Theatre, and the musicians recruited back in the 80s, many of them are still with us, are the cream of freelance musical talent in the tri-state area. We have musicians that play at the Philharmonic, the Metropolitan Opera, Broadway, and many of the chamber orchestras in New York. So they're an incredibly talented group of musicians, and they play together a lot in New York and the tri-state area. So that when they come back to Stamford, even though we don't do anything like as many concerts as, say, the Philharmonic does, we're not a scratch band. It's the orchestra coming back together again, being together again, and picking up where they left off. And that's incredibly important for ensemble and cohesiveness and delivering a terrifically good product. You raised one of my most frustrating labels, classical music. It's got such a bad rap, and we know what it means. The reason we use it is because we probably haven't come up with anything better. But I talk a lot about orchestral music, and the great French composer Pierre Boulez. I mean, he described an orchestra as an ensemble of possibilities, and I like to think that's what we're doing with the Stamford Symphony across Fairfield County. And by that I mean, sure, our core product is 65, 75, 85 musicians when we finish the season coming with the massive pictures at an exhibition. That's our core product on stage at the Palace Theatre, playing the great repertoire of the past and the new repertoire with living composers and music of tomorrow. Sure, that's the core. But we had a wonderful series before COVID called Symphony on Tap at the Half Full Brewery, where we took two musicians into the brewery, very much directed to people under 40, try and encourage them to come and hear some members of the symphony. $39 a ticket, open bar, and 2 sets of music by a couple of our musicians. And we did 3 of those. They all sold out. They were very successful. And people say to me, oh, great. Well, did those people then come to the Palace Theatre and buy a ticket? And the answer is yes, some, but not everybody. And that's okay. Everything we try and do, whether it's a full-blown concert, something in the classroom, something like Symphony on Tap, a chamber music concert at a library, they are all equally valid touch points to the symphony and equally valid connections to classical music. And it doesn't matter if people don't come to the Palace, or they just get their fix of the symphony in one format, and a format that works for them. Yeah, we have to be, the product has to be very varied. It has to be relevant to all those different audiences. One size doesn't fit all. And it's our way of delivering the mission of bringing great quality orchestral music in all its forms to as many people in the community as possible. And we haven't done that well enough for too long. And that's our biggest single mission right now.
And you also have if we're talking product, another product is the music education of children.
Yep.
Right? Tell us a little bit about how that happens, and how does that happen during a pandemic?
Well, that's our biggest single area of growth right now, because we made a strategic decision to hire a full-time community engagement and education manager. We stole him from the Chicago Symphony, and he's now in Stamford. And Nicholas Gonzalez is delivering amazing partnerships with public schools and after-school music education programs. And we're beginning now to look at all the school districts from Greenwich to Bridgeport. And historically, we used to sort of parachute in an opportunity and say to the teachers or whoever, here we are, the Stamford Symphony's here, aren't you lucky to have us? And that's what I call outreach. It's not engagement. And outreach is a word we've banned here at Stamford Symphony. It's just one way. We need an authentic engagement, which is two-way communication. And so now we absolutely start by talking to the teachers. Weeks after I got here 4 years ago, I took some teachers out, music teachers in the Stamford system. And I said, tell me what I need to know about what we do with you. And they said to me, why we do the Link Up concert series, which is a program from Carnegie Hall. About 150 orchestras nationwide do this terrific program where we take the whole orchestra in to the high school and we bus in third graders or fourth graders or whatever. And they said to me, why do you make us do Link Up with third graders? And I said, I don't know that we do, but say some more about that. And they said, well, we really would like to do it with fourth graders because we've had them in the classroom an extra year. They've had an extra year of learning the recorder. And by the time you guys show up, they're in a much better position to benefit from what you bring. Total no-brainer. I mean, the very next opportunity, we changed it to take Link Up for fourth graders. So there's an example of us actually, not just coming in and pretending we knew what was best, but actually listening to the teachers, listening to the after-school groups and saying, what is it that you need? Which is why you won't see a cookie cutter program by the Stamford Symphony in any two school districts or any two after-school organizations. We've just launched a brand new program with the Greater Connecticut Youth Orchestras, who are out in Fairfield and Bridgeport. And they said to us, you know what we'd really like? We'd like some of your guys to come in and coach our chamber music program. So yeah, they play massive big symphonies with 100 kids on stage, but where they needed our expertise was training string quartets, quintets, chamber music groups, very small groups where the skills are very different and the listening skills and the communication skills are vital when you're playing that sort of very intense and close-knit music. That's what we're doing. That's what they wanted. We can provide it. That ticks their particular box, which wasn't the way we used to do it. I think that's much the right way to go about it.
So the more that you can get music embedded into programs for children, the greater the educational opportunities for those children. I am very familiar in working with tech companies at how much music rates on a resume to hiring. And so there's a real economic, beyond education, there's an economic reason to have a strong music program in our community.
Yes, and the difference is we know what we're good at. We know what our musicians are comfortable delivering, and it's here available as you need it. It's not so much that we've created a curriculum and a program and we're putting it out there. It's negotiated with the schools and the after-school other organizations. So it's very bottom up, if you like. It's absolutely not us saying, here's what Stamford Symphony does, take it or leave it.
So I wanted to go down this path and to help everyone get a sense of what being a CEO of a symphony means. You have product, you have a customer audience, you've got to engage with a community. Now, before we move on to your last 18 months of adventure, taking a product and putting it online, put a cherry on top and talk about the addition of Michael Stern to the symphony and what that's bringing to the product.
Oh, it's simply transformative because we spent, gosh, 2 years with a a worldwide search for a new music director. The search committee looked at 180 videos and applications. We did have a year of looking at 5 conductors. None of them gelled. I mean, that relationship between a music director and the members of the orchestra is everything. I've worked in an orchestra where that relationship was not good, and it undermines everything. And when I got here, I said to the orchestra, the last thing we're going to do is foist a music director on you that you guys don't want. I mean, that's just plain stupid. And we didn't find somebody in year 1. We saw some great musicians, but the chemistry wasn't there. So it was frustrating to many, but it was the right thing to do. And so we took another year, and we find the guy that lives 3 miles down the road in Greenwich. You know, Michael is obviously Michael's an extraordinary talent. He's music director of Kansas City, one of only 15 52-week-a-year symphonies in the whole of America. They built a state-of-the-art concert hall 8 years ago, which is just quite incredible. And it's a very, very fine orchestra, and they've built something really important in Kansas City. And it's very connected to the community, and it's very involved, obviously, with community engagement and education. And Michael's got 2 young daughters in high school, and he absolutely gets the importance of putting back into a community where his kids are growing up. And by having a strong symphony that's delivering on so many levels across the county is important to him. And of course, he gelled with the orchestra, who were incredibly enthusiastic. And you know, in year 2, we stopped the process, and we went after him, and we hired him. and it's been tremendous. It's a very, very positive relationship. And of course, it's just getting started. I mean, we had a marvelous season. We had, you know, the boxes of brochures here that never got used because of COVID. And you know, we're about to sit down and start planning the 22-23 season, which March will be with us before we know it. And we're launching the next season. And Michael is just incredibly experienced and wise about all the things we can do and the things we can't do. And he's got a plan for turning this extremely good orchestra into a really great orchestra. Yeah. And we wanted to be an exemplar of what a small budget orchestra, and the New York Philharmonic's budget is 75 million. Our budget is 1.5 million, and we've just started a fundraising campaign to add $1 million to that in the next 5 years. We are small, but we want to be an example of what a small orchestra can do in its community when you've got a big sister organization 30 miles away in New York.
All right, so that provides a brilliant backdrop of why classical music, what a community-based orchestra is, and the value of having a visionary like a Michael Stern, who, if you come and see a show, it's not only about the music, the things that he says, the way he ties together his insights about culture and, you know, modern life into the context of the music it's even if you don't like classical music, to hear his context is really amazing. So all of that.
Can I just add something there? It's amazing. I've been taking people to the symphony here for 4 years now. People who didn't even know we had a symphony in Stamford, and certainly never set foot inside the palace and heard a full-blown symphony orchestra before. Yeah. Nobody I have taken these last 4 years ever said to me at the end of the concert, "I'm sorry, that was awful. I didn't like it. It's really not for me." Not one. On the contrary, they say, "Oh, wow, I had no idea." Now, they're not going to necessarily go out and be subscribers and donate, you know, straight off the bat, but people are coming back and hearing another concert, and it is eye-opening. It's one of the most wonderful things I do, to take somebody to a concert, and just the physical. I remember when I was 10 years old, the physical, the full symphony orchestra hitting you. when you're in a big theatre. It is very special. And, you know, if anybody's watching that has never been to hear an orchestra before, never been to the Palace, never heard us, you know, call me. There's a ticket for you. There's a seat waiting for you, because you have to try this. And I bet you're going to enjoy it. Yeah. So that's a really important message to get over.
It's a real addition to the area. And now we're talking about ways to get small businesses involved. So there's so many things we can do with it. Okay, so we've got this backdrop. And let's spend the rest of the time talking about what it was like to have a product that was built around having people come see it. And you couldn't do that. And it's been 18 months. Let's back up to February of 2020 and tell us about tell us your story.
Well, it was bloody annoying, frankly, to start with, because we were having a really good year. We were having our best houses ever. And Michael was coming. Michael did the opening concert and he was doing the third concert and he wasn't doing the other three. And we managed to squeeze in our Beethoven 250th anniversary concert, which I think was the best audience we've ever had. And then, you know, we had to cancel the last two concerts when we were on a roll. It was devastating. And I mean, before I say anything, I must say, you know, we can talk about websites and technical stuff and so on, but actually there's a horrible human story to this, in as much as we had 65 members of the orchestra who were suddenly out of work. They lost overnight on the 16th of March, when the lockdown started in New York. They lost all sources of income. And, you know, you've read the horror stories about some employers that gave them nothing. And teaching dries up and Broadway closed. People are claiming unemployment. It's, you know, that, I mean, thank goodness, we didn't lose anybody to the pandemic. A few people got sick, but thank goodness we didn't lose anybody. Mm. But it's been the most awful time. It's hard enough being a freelancer in anything, I think, as it is. But when your opportunities dry up completely, you know, we have musicians, there are musicians who have left the business and won't come back. So there's been a real human tragedy here for so many of our musicians.
So at the core of your taking the symphony online, which is where we're going, it really gets back to the human relationships you have as a CEO of an organization. Yeah.
So it all happened incredibly quickly, and March and April 2020 is a bit of a blur, because we were very reactive. And a very smart person said to me, as we were locking down, you now need to make Stamford Symphony the 4th emergency service for Fairfield County. And I really took that to heart. And we made a very early decision that whatever we do during the pandemic, we're not putting anything behind a firewall. We're not charging a penny for whatever we may offer. And we are going to be there as solace, as comfort, as entertainment, as an opportunity through all this hell. I mean, we've forgotten how scary it was back then. You know, parking a hospital ship in the harbor in New York, and you know, there are people in tents outside because there are no beds left. I think we've sort of blotted that out. Yeah. And if you remember back, it was very scary and in New York. And we decided very quickly we had to create something that maintained a connection to the audience and a wider community that perhaps are too far away to come to our concerts or had yet found their way to hear a concert. So it was funny, actually. I remember the morning, a colleague and I decided, what is this thing we're going to do? We knew we had to develop the website. And we need to call it something. We need to brand it. We need to be able to say. And there wasn't even time to have a brainstorm with anybody else. Literally, I think one of us said, channel, let's have a channel. And Stamford Symphony channel was created one morning in the middle of March, and it stuck, and it's still up there now on the top of the website when you go there, stanfordsymphony.org. And the wonderful thing that's happened.
How did realizing that you have to put media on a network to become that fourth service, what changed? How did you have to change your thinking?
Well, we knew, I mean, thank goodness for technology. I mean, it's not as if, you know, you can't imagine, you know, back in 1918, how, well, actually, what happened in 1918, people kept playing. I mean, you know, theatres didn't close. You know, it was a very different time, and goodness knows what that did to the numbers back then. There weren't lockdowns, they kept playing. We obviously couldn't do that, and we knew we had to use technology. And I've told you before, I'm not a techie, but I knew we had to use technology. You know, we had a pretty good website, and obviously we're all familiar with YouTube channels and so on. So, but we had never done this before. We had never streamed anything before, and we'd just begun to get into videos of people talking about forthcoming concerts and asking for money and so on. But we hadn't gone down the, you know, we had to find the media agreement that we have with the union and blow the dust off it and find out what the rules are for recording our musicians and so on. But what happened incredibly was that the members of the orchestra were all on the same page with us and said, how can we help? We know we need to do something. And they did two marvelous things. They started sending content that they recorded in other places, and they made new content from their living rooms with their iPhones and whatever. And the thing we did very quickly, which you may remember, we did one of those mashup performances of Amazing Grace, with all our musicians recording their part, and then it's a massive job to edit it all together. Very, very powerful. We did one of those quite early on.
How many eyeballs you got to that?
Oh, well, we showed it again for the our first online gala at the end of in September 2020, and I think we had getting on for 100,000 views of that. It was magnificent. And when we edited it again for the gala, which we dedicated to hospital workers and frontline workers who had done so much, we had a wonderful photographer capture some stills of COVID images in Fairfield County, and we did the slow movement of the Dvorak New World Symphony, the sort of coming home tune, which many people know, and one of the most moving things that you can watch. It's quite incredible. But the other thing the members of the orchestra did was they made 1,000 telephone calls to subscribers and donors. They just picked the phone up and said, "Are you okay? We're thinking of you. We're putting content on the Stamford Symphony channel, and we just want to know we're here for you." It wasn't an ask for money. It was absolutely not about that. It was, you're our community. You're our family.
One of those rare times where everyone really comes together.
Yeah, yeah.
So and what kinds of reactions? Now you got the channel up there. You figured out programming. Another thing you did was a gala. Maybe you want to just touch base on the gala that you took online. And what are some of the reactions you're getting and some of the results from a business perspective you're seeing?
Well, we realized this wasn't going to be a 3-month blip. We had to live a new reality, and the whole season ultimately went online. And we worked with a great company called Purple Critter in New York, and we recorded new programs. Obviously, the original programs we were going to do at the Palace were too big, with social distancing and so on. So we explored some repertoire we'd never played before, some smaller works, some new works, but we said to our subscribers, about a third of our subscribers had already renewed their subscription, but by the time we were supposed to start the season, and nobody asked for their money back. Everybody said, whatever you give us online will be our season. And incredible support. And we recorded some great programs. And
what did the technology side of that look like? I know you got a really great partner.
Yeah, I mean, if you can look at these old concerts on the website, they're still there. And the first one was fine, and they got better. And then we threw a little bit more money at them, and we bought in some bigger cameras and some cameras on booms and things, and got some different angles. We've got some great sound, and two things have happened. I think we kept in touch with our existing audience, and obviously we got some people to watch who didn't know us before. And you know, thanks to the internet, anybody on the planet can watch a Stamford Symphony concert now. And
has that changed the way you manage things operationally now that you've got people coming over the internet?
Well, I mean, the big decision for all orchestras will be, how do we balance this going forwards? And I mean, the first thing is it's expensive. To stream concerts is expensive, and of course, you can't sell tickets to these things at anything like a price that you can for in the concert hall. You know, when you're competing with the Berlin Philharmonic, who has a digital concert hall for $25 a month, and you can, you know, watch their concerts 24/7. You know, you can't charge $75 for a 1 hour concert. So you have to factor that in. I mean, it's just not an economically viable product. But in terms of marketing and education and information and community service, it's invaluable. Mm-hmm. And I think we'll continue to update the channel. We will occasionally stream something, which we think is important to record and retain. And the other nice spin-off of this was how up close and personal people could get with our members of the orchestra. Because when you come to the Palace, they're all on stage, they're a long, long way away, they're all dressed in black. It's a sort of one-dimensional visual look, and you hear the music. On screen, I mean, I interviewed a lot of the orchestra. We did this silly thing called On Russell's Virtual Sofa. And I had a different guest every week from the orchestra or the management or whatever. And I did one with our principal oboe. And we talked about how she makes reeds. And it's not a simple exercise. You don't buy a bag of reeds, stick it in the end of the oboe and blow. Far from it. They are individually handmade. They take hours and hours of work, and then sometimes they don't work. So and we did this. I'm sorry. She did, and now people know her as this incredible individual who had, you know, worked so hard shaping reeds and all the, you know, before she goes on stage and blows a note, she's done a day's work making reeds, and that's a side and you know, that behind the scenes a view of what happens in an orchestra and what individual musicians have to do. And those sorts of talks were incredibly powerful. And you know, we've had emails from people saying, I thought I knew the orchestra and I love the orchestra, but now I know them so much better. And
think of that as any business that has that opportunity. If you're a CEO and you're dealing with people who may not want to come into the office because of the current conditions, and your customers who have changed their behaviors, your ability to make your people within your company part of the online experience like you have.
Yeah, I mean, I say chief execs of nonprofits have to do two things. They have to be communicators and they have to be fundraisers. And it's a boring cliche, and most CEOs don't do it, but a decent CEO has to spend at least half his or her time raising money. Many of them do not. Many of them hire a VP of development and think they've done it. No, there are so many gifts that only the CEO can get. We're not big enough. We don't have a VP of development here. I do the fundraising. So
being a CEO of any business is a lonely job.
Yeah, well, I don't know that it's lonely, but there's that side of it you have to do. But and they go hand in hand. You have to be a brilliant communicator, or try to be, and so often you've got to be the face of the organization. I mean, Michael's the face of the organization musically and on stage and so on. But I'm here 52 weeks a year, and I made it my mission to ensure that I know as many of the community. Obviously, donors and subscribers, you have to have that. Now, if you get to ask them to fund the orchestra, which is basically 75% of our income is donated, only 25% comes from ticket sales.
Another thing that you've done really well is working with Michael is to each of you have your own persona that you present to the audience, and you have your roles that you play, and the story comes together because you've worked on that.
Yeah, I mean, it was pretty easy because we hit it off immediately, and we didn't know each other before he took the job. That's another. I talked about the relationship between musicians and music director. You need to have a good relationship between the chief exec and the music director as well, because we speak weekly, if not daily, sometimes, and that's really important because we're driving and leading the organization, and that's an important relationship to pull all the sides together. So yeah, we're very lucky that we work well together, and we've only just started. I'm as I said, not start 4 years this week, and I just feel we've done a lot of firefighting and a lot of prep, and now as we really get back to pairs of concerts, as we should be in March, April, and May for the season coming in 22, and then we launch 22, 23, we're going to see, I hope, the payoff for everything we've been doing in the last 4 years.
So as we wrap up, tell us a little bit about your experience with the gala and how to put on your big annual show that had been in a physical place. Now it was online. And let's wrap up with some of your insights about just the whole experience.
This was very scary because, like most nonprofits, the annual gala is really important in terms of bringing a chunk of change into that 75% number I was talking about. And we had been doing live on stage galas with tables on the stage at the Palace, and we raised $180,000 in 2019 before the pandemic. And then I thought, well, is anybody going to show up if we record this concert, if we broadcast it live? We did it from Stamford Hospital. I had no idea. I lowered the budget to $100,000 because I had no idea whether we'd beat 180. But we had a lot of fun putting it together. The great Pinker Zuckerman, who was supposed to open the season, came instead and recorded the Bach A minor concerto for us. His wife, who's a brilliant cellist, came and played did a solo for us, and then the orchestra played a number of pieces. And we had the amazing Dr. Michael Cody, who's head of heart surgery at Stamford Hospital and a very good pianist, play with some chamber music with our guys. And then we had great visuals, and we took the musicians around the county and they played live. We put together what I think was a very attractive program. And to our astonishment, we had about 1,000 people watching the show live, which we had about 250 people on stage at the Palace having dinner, because you save all the money of not having to give people a dinner and all those costs of a standard gala. And honestly, to my astonishment, we raised $250,000 that night. And I'd heard that others had more success with their online galas than their live ones, and it proved to be so. I think I want to get back to doing them live, because live is live, and you know, that's how music should really be heard. But of course, this year wasn't possible. On the 23rd of October this year, we'll be live this year from the Westport Library, and we have another online program, this time in aid of all our education programs. So we know a little bit more about it. We've done a few things differently, and like we said the first time, we'll be able to say again this time, every penny that people donate to the gala this year will go directly to the music education programs. And it's important to be able to say that.
So what are your key takeaways in making this transition to a digital world or a hybrid world? What is sort of, if you were going to share with the next CEO, what would your takeaways be?
It has to remain in the mix. I mean, the idea that we go back now to just our regular concerts at the Palace and the website morphs back to being a transactional tool to buy a ticket is unthinkable. And I think that would be just plain daft to do that. There's too many good things that we've got to share. And I think people are going to be, would be disappointed if we lost that connection. Talking about the musicians and so on. There's so many good things that have come out. I call this the silver lining of the COVID cloud, that this greater connection and these things that really only work on the small screen, which you couldn't do on the big stage at the Palace. We need to hang on to that, because concerts take 2 hours at the Palace. You can be looking at your laptop at 3 o'clock in the morning if you can't sleep, and watching the Stamford Symphony channel, and people do. So yeah, I mean, I think it's part of the ongoing mix. I think it can be used better to encourage people to come and hear the live experience. I mean, that has to be the be all and end all. I mean, you know, symphony orchestras only sound great really in the hall. Sure, you can make great recordings, but it's not the same as hearing live music on stage and watching the musicians play.
So it's additive.
Totally. Yeah, it can tell the story. You can go into more detail. There's more time. You can have more video. You can have more people talking heads, all those things. And it totally enhances the live experience. So it's here to stay. And it's a resource issue. I mean, you know, the channel takes time, moving takes time, curating all this stuff takes time. But I think it's really, really important. And increasingly, actually, it's how particularly younger people, but not just younger people, want to consume music, and it's part of the mix. So we would be very silly not to maintain it at the highest level as we can.
I saw that the highest adoption of classical music channels and playlists on, I think it was Spotify, was actually the demographic of like 28 to 40. And
that's very encouraging. Yeah.
Rise during the pandemic of that age group listening to classical music.
The challenge we have as musicians and administrators is to make the live product more accessible, because in so many orchestras it's still a 19th century format. You know, Brahms could come back and look at a Stamford Symphony concert sometimes and not be that unfamiliar with what we're doing. You know, we sit in the dark in serried rows looking at people with tailcoats on. You know, it's not sustainable. And I think one of the jobs we have is to, the good news is there's nothing wrong with Brahms. The product, the music is great, and don't mess with that. But I do think we have to be more out of the box in terms of how we present concerts, when, how, to whom, where, with a glass in your hand or whatever. It's going to shock some of the purists, but so be it. We have to make some changes, and we have to evolve more. Classical music's been very, very it's been a great survivor. I mean, every year, every decade, classical music gets written off, and symphonies won't be here because, and we're still here. But you know, there are so many other challenges now, and young people are not.
You've got to deal with all of the business and product and employee and customer aspects, and then now you've brought in the production aspect of making sure that there's digital media, and on the website you had a tech team that also stood up to the challenge as well, right?
Yeah, I mean, as I said, we've never done this before, and our director of operations and our marketing team here and so on, they morphed immediately and learned new skills and delivered new things and liaised with experts so quickly. And, I'm very proud of everybody that stepped up and delivered such an incredible product in no time at all. And, I've looked at some of the things the so-called major orchestras have done with larger budgets and dozens of staff and so on. We look pretty damn good next to some of them, I have to say.
Yeah. So when it gets leadership attention, this can be an additive thing that increases your revenue and helps you prepare for the next generation. And I think every CEO could learn from your experience.
I hope so, because increasingly I want people never to say to me, "Oh, I didn't know we had a symphony." At least I want people to know Stamford has a symphony. Fairfield County has an extremely good professional orchestra here, serving the community. You might not be a subscriber, but you might come to one of our concerts that appeals, and that's okay. Yeah. But at least you need to know about it, and you need, I hope, to be proud of what we offer in the community.
And we also now have a product online, and I know we're getting people to come and experience it, even though they never do come downtown Stamford.
Exactly right. Exactly.
So, well, we appreciate you taking the time to tell your story. And it's been a pleasure to work with you on the journey. And Jesse, thank you so much for making this production smooth as butter and joining me on this journey. It's been a pleasure to talk to you both. All right. Thanks for joining us for this episode of the Publio podcast. We've enjoyed having you part of our show. If you like what you hear, please like, share, and comment across social media and below. You can also subscribe to our YouTube channel and find us on Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook, and all of those by searching for Publio. If you are interested in taking our course, please check us out. If your business is in need of a content strategy, we've got a program for you. It's a fully interactive course with worksheets and workbooks and videos, and we'd love to have you be part of the class, and you can always join us for office hours or make one-on-one appointments as well. So check us out at Publio, PUBLI.io on the web, and we'll see you next time. Thanks.